Good day, and welcome to the Capacity Building Collaborative Center for States Training of Trainers Child Welfare Response to Child and Youth Sex Trafficking Curriculum Conference Call. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Ms. Christy Stankovich. Please go ahead, Ms.
Thank you, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items and introduction. Throughout this webinar, you'll see some open-ended questions. At this point, you'll type in the Questions tab to answer in the GoToWebinar pane to your right. We'll also have polling questions. We'll have 2 total. You'll select what appears on your screen, choices A or B. You also may access 4 handouts in the Handouts tab. At this time, we'll use the questions feature to let us know what state, tribe, or territory agency you're joining us from. So please go ahead. And we have Pennsylvania, North Carolina, New York, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, thank you, Florida, Louisiana, and a lot of other states that are coming in very fast, as well as territories and tribes. So at this time, I will turn it over to Taffy Compain of the Children's Bureau.
Hello all. On behalf of the Children's Bureau, I'd like to thank all of you who are attending today's webinar. My name is Taffy Compain, and I'm the National Foster Care Specialist at the Children's Bureau. And I'm one of the Children's Bureau team members that are working closely with the Capacity Building Collaborative and the Center for States on implementing an agenda to build capacity within child welfare systems in response to the Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act of 2014, or as some of you know it, PL 113-183. This particular learning experience provides systems with a comprehensive curriculum that builds systems capacities in understanding critical issues in child sex trafficking and address the mandates provided under PL 113-183. This product was developed with a number of tools and resources that enhance the training experience, as well as is flexible to support adjustments based on local needs. And it also includes modules for varying key audiences. Again, I'd like to thank you for your interest and your participation, and I'll turn it over to Jennifer Marcelli.
Thank you, Taffy. Good morning to some and afternoon to others. My name is Jennifer Marcelli. I am a program area manager working on the focus area of PL 113-183 for the Capacity Building Center for States. And I'm going to give a brief overview of the Child Welfare Capacity Building Collaborative, as well as the Center for States. In October of 2014, ICF International was awarded a contract by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families, the Children's Bureau, to establish the new Child Welfare Capacity Building Collaborative. Next slide, please. The Center for States, the Center for Tribes, and the Center for Courts are partners who together form the Capacity Building Collaborative. This collaborative consolidates services that had previously been provided by National Child Welfare Resource Centers. The consolidation makes it possible to have increased coordination, leveraging of resources, and provides a more strategic service provision. On the next slide, you'll see our goal is to work with partners and jurisdictions to support capacity building to lead to improved outcomes for family and children. On the next slide, you'll see we do this by partnering with states, territories, tribes, and courts to identify, design, and implement innovative solutions that meet the unique needs of each jurisdiction, such as you'll hear later about our learning experience. The Center for States serves states and territorial public child welfare agencies and Title 40 waiver demonstration jurisdictions. ICF International supports the Center for States.
Maggie Bishop serves as Executive Director at ICF International.
And you may recognize ICF's work with the Child Welfare Information Gateway, as ICF has a long history of working on technical assistance contracts with the Children's Bureau and other government agencies. The Center for States aims to provide evidence-based capacity building support services that will improve performance and support states and territories in effectively initiating, implementing, and sustaining change and innovation. To achieve this goal, we will work with our partners to create and deliver coordinated, inclusive, and well-informed capacity building services. And to take us through this great learning experience, I'm going to hand the phone over to Brenda Lockwood.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. My name is Brenda Lockwood, and I work with Constituency Services at the Capacity Building Center for States. And I'm really excited to share the information and facilitate some discussion about the curriculum modules related to the child welfare response to child and youth sex trafficking. Today we will be providing you with information you need in order to get the most out of utilizing the 4 curriculum modules related to the child welfare response to child and youth sex trafficking. As you can see on this slide on your screen, the goals for this session are for you to understand how to access the curriculum materials and resources that are available to you, understand the content of each module, identify important learning points from each of the modules, explain areas for customization, and understand goals for evaluation. Next slide. We have a polling question here, and we're just wondering, it would be helpful for me to know anyways, if folks on the phone have had a chance to review the curriculum modules, the materials, prior to today's session. You'll just select one, either yes or no, if you've been able to look through any of the materials yet. Christy, I'm not seeing any.
Sure. We have about 75%, so wait maybe 1 or 2 more seconds.
Okay, thanks. Oh, I see it now. Thank you. Okay. So it looks like most folks have not had a chance to look through the materials. So it'll be good for us then to spend a little bit of time just helping you become familiar with what's available to you or what each of the curriculum modules contains and how they're laid out. So next slide, please. Before I move on to introducing the curriculum modules, I also want to let folks know that we also have Melissa Snow on the line, and Melissa works with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and we were happy to have her as our subject matter expert in the writing of this curriculum package. So she's on the line, and folks have questions about the content in particular. I'm sure she would be happy to answer those questions for you as we go along. Next slide, please. And I also want to say, too, that if you have questions as we go along, please feel free to type in your questions in the question tab, and we will address them as we go along or when it seems most appropriate to do so. So as you may recall, if you participated in the introductory webinar that was held a few weeks ago, there are 4 modules in this series, and the first module is a caseworker's curriculum. And this module was developed to help build the capacity of child welfare professionals to identify and serve survivors of child sex trafficking. This first module, caseworkers module, will provide professional child welfare professionals with knowledge and skills that support the effective implementation of PL 113-183. The second module is the supervisor's curriculum, and this module will prepare supervisors to supervise child sex trafficking casework and PL 113-183. The third module is for administrators and managers, and the material in this module will provide participants with an opportunity to explore the roles and responsibilities of administrators and managers in the implementation of PL 113-183. And the fourth module, the caregiver's curriculum, will provide an overview of the legislation and the requirements of child welfare agencies related to the legislation, as well as provide some discussion and strategies for working with kids who are in their care who are survivors of sex trafficking. And it's important for us to note here that we strongly encourage that everyone, well, at least supervisors, managers, and administrators, participate in or attend the caseworker curriculum module before attending the supervisor module or the administrator and manager's curriculum module. And that is because the caseworker curriculum module really lays the foundation for the requirements for agencies in the implementation of PL 113-183, and it also provides some important information around working with survivors as well as working with multidisciplinary teams. And so that Module 1 will provide that foundation for the supervisors in their curriculum as well as administrators and managers in their curriculum. Next slide, please. So each of the curriculum modules contains 4 elements. They each contain a curriculum guide, and the curriculum guide we'll walk through briefly in a few minutes. Handouts, digital stories, which we'll talk about in a little while, as well as links and references to additional resources that you can access that will help just add additional learning materials to each of the modules. Next slide, please. So here we go. In order to access the curriculum materials, you'll need to log on to learn.childwelfare.gov. And this will take you into our learning management system. So I think Christy was going to log on to that. So when you click on, or when you log into or direct your browser to learn.childwelfare.gov, you will come to a landing page, and it'll look something similar to this. Christy is already logged in, so it'll look slightly different the first time you go because you won't have been logged in yet. So if we could go to, let's see, if we could go to the next slide first, Christy, that would be helpful. We can move things around. Okay, next slide. So when you first go to learn.childwelfare.gov, you will come to a landing page which asks you to create an account. It's a free account, but in order to access the materials, you'll need to create an account. And this is the screen you'll see. You'll just you need to add your name, your email address, and then go through a series of additional questions that just gather some information about where you work, what your role is in your agency, what types of information that you are interested in learning about. And then once you're logged in, you will arrive at the home page for our learning management system. And on this screen that you see in front of you that says Accessing the Curriculum, on the landing page, you will see a catalog for various learning experiences that are available for states, tribes, and territories to access. And on this slide, we have an example of the tile that you would want to click on in order to access the training curriculum for the child and youth sex trafficking learning experience. So, Christy, could you go back to the internet page? Yes, so here's the page. So once you log in, you'll be on this page, and you'll click on the tile on the bottom right that says Child Welfare Response to Child and Youth Sex Trafficking Learning Experience. Okay, go back to the slide, unless you wanted to click on there. Were you going to click on there?
It looks like I clicked on there, but the webinar is catching up, so there it goes.
Okay. So once you click on that tile to come to this learning experience, this is the page you'll come to. And if you want, can you scroll through? Scroll down, and it'll provide you with different tiles to access each of the 4 modules. And you'll see that each of the 4 modules has their own page to access. And you'll just click on each of the tiles in order to access them. So Christy clicked on the caseworkers curriculum tile and landed on this page. And on this page, what you'll see is different ways that you can download the information. So if you wanted to download each of the elements separately, you would click on each of the tabs there that say Curriculum Guide in order to download the Curriculum Guide. Click on Handouts to download the handouts, and click on Presentation to download the PowerPoint presentation. And then beneath those, you'll see tiles for downloading the digital stories. And you'll want to note here that the digital stories are available in closed caption with closed captions, as well as an audio file version is available. So you want to make sure that you download the version that you'll need to utilize within your agency or for your audience. Hopefully folks know, too, that when you use a closed caption version that you'll need to enable your closed captioning in order to see the closed captioning on the screen. You'll also note that you can download the entire curriculum module, the handouts, the guide, the presentations, by clicking on the zip file, which is the tab above that, Christy. So if you just wanted to download all of Module 1, you would click here to download a zip file of this module. And again, please keep in mind that if you do click on this to download the module, all of the materials together, you still need to download the digital story separately. And then you'll also see there a tab that on the bottom that says, or the blue tab on the last blue tile, I should say. If you want to download the entire 4-module curriculum package, you could click there and you will download all of the materials you need for all 4 modules, with the exception of the digital stories. And those, the digital stories you will always need to download separately. Let's see. So we can go back to the PowerPoint. And we can move on to the next slide. And the next slide. Oh, these are slides, sorry. This slide here just shows you what will pop up if you click on the curriculum guide button. And then the next slide shows what will pop up if you click on the handouts. And then the next slide shows you what will pop up if you click on the presentation. And then I believe the next slide shows you what you'll see when you click on the digital story. And I wanted to share a little bit more about the digital stories. I think they're such a great addition to this curriculum that you'll really want to know about. I know that some states have already created a curriculum around the implementation of PL 113-183, and hopefully you'll find some usefulness in these curriculum modules as well. And if nothing else, the digital stories. So the digital stories are it's a storytelling process in which we use computer-based tools for survivors to tell their stories. As with any type of storytelling, most digital stories focus on a specific topic, and in this case, we are interested in stories about human trafficking from the survivor, staff, supervisor, and provider point of view. As the name implies, digital stories usually contain some mixture of computer-based images, text, recorded audio narration, video clips, and or music. And each of the digital stories that we have available have been created by the individual who is the subject of the story. So they're the narrator. They've created the transitions. They've developed the timing of how quickly the digital story goes. They've selected the music as well as the pictures that enhance their story. And because of this, as you watch the digital stories, you may notice that that the pace of a particular story might be fast, and that is because the storyteller wanted to use the pacing as an effect of getting their story across, or there may be an effect of some shaking within the digital story. And again, that's because the storyteller wanted to use that effect to help get their story across. Something to keep in mind as you prepare to download the digital stories is that it will take a few minutes to download each one. We've had several people test downloading of the stories, and it can take anywhere from 2 minutes to 10 minutes for each story, just depending on on your internet service in your agency. So keep that in mind. And again, there are 2 versions. So there's the closed captioning version available, as well as the audio version. So be sure to download the one that you'll need to use. slide. And along with the digital stories, as I mentioned, there's some additional resources available to you that can help enhance the material. And you can find them at www.childwelfare.gov, so they're on the gateway. The first is a handout titled At Risk for Sex Trafficking, Youth Who Run Away from Foster Care. So if you wanted to add more information around youth in foster care, runaway youth from foster care to the training curriculum, that would be a resource. There's also a handout titled Resources to Support Implementation of Sex Trafficking Provision of PL 113-183. And this is a handout that will provide you with lots of other resources that you could look to enhance your curriculum modules. The third handout is titled List of Related Organizations, Sex Trafficking Prevention and Intervention. And again, it's a handout that will provide you with places to go to get additional information to enhance your curriculum modules. And then also another resource website, which is the Tribal Coalition's .org website, which provides information specific to the sex trafficking of Native women and children. And you can find that at www.tribalcoalitions.org. And that website was just launched here within the last few months and provides a lot of really important information and resources for you to enhance your curriculum modules on the content related to sex trafficking of Native women and children. I wanted to, let's see. Well, yes, I need to turn it over now to Hung Fo and Hung.
Thanks, Brenda. Good afternoon, everyone. And my name is Hung Fo, and I'm with the Center for State's internal evaluation team. So for the next few slides, I'd like to talk with you about the Center's evaluation of this curriculum, but also as trainers out there, I'd also like to really solicit your support and your commitment to evaluating your own delivery of these curriculums, as well as a way to not only provide the center with really valuable information about how well the curriculum is working or what needs to be improved, but also for your own agencies as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of some of the benefits of evaluation. So one of the things that I'd like to mention before I really dive into this is you have a handout on your screen. It's the second one down. It's titled Child Welfare Response to Sex Trafficking Evaluation Materials Instructions for Trainers. I'm going to highlight a few things from that handout, and so feel free to open that up and sort of follow along in that, but also you'll see in the handout there's contact information, how you can get a hold of me if you have any questions about the evaluation materials or the package, and as you start to implement it, I'd be happy to provide you with additional support as well. So in the first webinar, we talked about how our training evaluation for this curriculum is really divided into two parts, and actually the two parts are on the screen here, so it's a little bit misleading that you see part one in the title. But really one part of our evaluation is getting your feedback as the trainers, as the folks who are really taking the curriculum and using it in your agencies. We want to get your response to it. We want to get an understanding of how you're using the curriculum. And if you're not using the curriculum, we'd love to get your feedback on that as well. We want to get a sense, too, of your overall satisfaction with the curriculum, what you liked about it, what didn't you like, how you implemented it in terms of which pieces of the curriculum you use. So those kinds of questions are really important for us at the center to understand, so that it can inform our future efforts to develop these types of learning experiences and capacity building efforts. So that's really one part of the evaluation. So as you get into registration for CAP Learn. We'd like to reach out to all of you who have registered for this webinar as well, and really to get your feedback and your thoughts about the curriculum. The other part of the evaluation is really trying to understand the actual impact or what's happening at your agency in terms of your use of the curriculum. And this is so critical, I think, to really understanding sort of what the impact of the curriculum is having. So, and I'm going to cover actually now a lot of what's in that handout. If Christy, if you could move to the next slide. So what you have in that handout really is an explanation of what we can provide to you upon your request as you think about evaluating. So I know oftentimes or sometimes I've been involved in situations where a program or an intervention is built and then the evaluators are sort of called in towards the end when you're actually getting ready to implement. So I want you to think about really evaluation as you're implementing, as you're sort of going through these modules and thinking about, well, how are we going to implement this? Which localities, if you're in a locally administered system, which localities are we going to roll it out to? I'd really encourage you guys to really think about, okay, so how are we going to roll out the evaluation? What sort of protocols do we need to go through in order for us to ensure that we can evaluate this training program? So as you do that, and if you're one of the early implementers, especially if you're an agency that is looking to implement this curriculum or to use this curriculum in the next 3 to 4 months, I would love to hear from you. And as I said before, my contact information is in the handout. And if you can shoot me an email, I will give you more information in terms of what we can provide you in the evaluation. So what's in that handout is an explanation, essentially, of what's in these instruments. One of the big advantages of using this evaluation package that we've already developed is that you don't have to create the instruments. We have already created, essentially, a pre- and post-test and a sort of feedback survey, so it's all in one package for each of the curriculums. So each of the 4 curriculums has a unique pre- and post-test and a set of satisfaction questions. So the pre- and post-test questions are designed to really assess the trainees or your staff's gains in knowledge and understanding. So each of these curriculums, there are targeted competencies and learning objectives, and the pre- and post-test questions are designed to assess your trainees' gains before and after training related to those competencies. And then, like most trainings that I've been involved with, there's usually a set of questions as well, just asking the trainees about sort of how their reactions to the delivery of the curriculum, their reactions to the trainer, to the structure and the content, and those kinds of questions that give you some good feedback about the actual curriculum itself. So one big advantage there, like I said before, that I want to emphasize is if you choose to use the curriculum, especially to use the curriculum sort of as it is, then we've created these instruments already that you can really just kind of plop into your system and then put into your protocol, so to speak, of your training. And how we'll do it, essentially, I can work with you or whoever will be developing this training in your agency to get you what you need. Essentially, we have developed these instruments in one of these web-based programs called Survey Gizmo. You may be familiar with SurveyMonkey. There's others out there. Essentially, what we would do is create these in Survey Gizmo, send you a link. You could use this link to send out to your participants or your trainees in an email. They would take the surveys online, and then we would gather the results for you and then send you essentially some reporting on a regular basis. and the reporting would be essentially structured in a way that I think would be really useful to you. It would provide you with some tables and charts and some really basic information about the results from the survey. So, again, instruments created for you, results that you can get from our system, and then the big benefit for the center would be that we would be able to use this information in aggregate to really look at, is this curriculum sort of working as we hope it would work? Is it getting the outcomes at your agency that are targeted? Are we sort of achieving the goals of the curriculum? And those questions are really important to us as a center in terms of trying to ensure that we deliver quality services and products to you all. So that is the evaluation package in a nutshell. So I can't say enough about it, obviously, but I just want to really encourage you to think about this as you are thinking about using this curriculum and how you're going to implement it, and don't hesitate to let me know about it. So I will also be in touch with folks that are on this webinar in sort of the upcoming weeks to see what your interest is. So don't be surprised if you get an email from me asking sort of where you are in terms of your implementation of the curriculum and your interest, engaging your interest in the evaluation material. So that is the evaluation in a nutshell. And so there's my contact information there, and I would be happy to answer any questions when we get to the end as well. So at this time, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Brenda.
Thank you, Hung. And so as Hung said, if you do want to contact him, you can send him an email at hung.pho@icfi.com. That's hung.pho@icfi.com. And I know he'll be happy to hear from folks who would be interested in participating in this evaluation process. So in this last section, we talked about the different types of materials or the different materials you'll find on the website related to the curriculum modules. So for each module, there's a curriculum guide, there's handouts, digital stories, links to additional resources for each of the modules. Let's just do a brief overview of the PL 113-183 legislation. First, we have a polling question for you. So, Christy, if you could, here we go. So, we want to know from you which is the correct answer. So, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, what number of children are at risk of being sexually exploited each year in the United States? Is it A, 100 to 5,000? Is it B, 12,000 to 100,000? Is it C, 100,000 to 300,000? Or is it D, 400,000 to 1 million? Which do you think it is? How many children are at risk of being sexually exploited each year in the United States? You want to click on the answer you think is correct.
And we have about 75%, so we'll wait just a little bit more.
Okay, thank you. Aha. So the majority of you answered 100,000 to 300,000, and that is correct. That's a lot of kids who are at risk of being exploited here in the U.S. each year. And like I said, that information came from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So as you all know, in September of 2004, Public Law 113-183 was enacted. It's one of several laws that was passed to address sex trafficking and presents specific requirements for child welfare agencies. Certain provisions require agencies to develop and implement policies and procedures, including caseworker training, for identifying, reporting, and determining services for children and youth who are victims or at risk becoming victims of sex trafficking. The law also requires protocols and procedures to locate and provide services to children who run away from foster care. So I'm curious, and this is another question that we'll ask you to respond in the questions tab. What do you already know about the requirements of child welfare agencies related to PL 113-183? What have you already been working towards within your agencies related to the requirements of this legislation? Feel free to type your responses in the questions box. As we know, folks have already been working on this. Not seeing anything.
Okay, Brenda, I can start reading some responses if you'd like.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I can't see them here. It's too small.
Normalcy, how to report runaway youth from foster care.
Great.
Awareness. Increase awareness and developing plans for implementation. Youth 14 and older will be allowed. Whoops, my screen just, there's too many responses.
I know, they're going so fast.
Youth 14 and older will be allowed to identify 2 case planning team members to participate in developing and reviewing their case plans. And I won't read all of them, but if you'd like to select more, Brenda, on your end, I'd welcome that too.
Okay. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing them on mine. For some reason, it's either delayed or not coming through. So
okay.
Thank you for reading those. It sounds like, go ahead.
I will keep going if you'd like.
I think that's good. It sounds like folks have really been, studying up on this and planning for the implementation since it's underway already. So again, just to reiterate what you see on your screen about the sections of the Public Law 113-183, the child welfare agencies are required to respond to in Section 101 on identifying, documenting, and determining services for child and youth survivors. Section 102, reporting instances of trafficking, which somebody had mentioned in the questions tab. Section 103, sex trafficking data and adoption and foster care analysis and reporting system. Section 104, locating and responding to runaway foster youth. And Section 103, involving foster youth in case planning, which again, someone had mentioned in our questions tab. So thank you. Let's move on to the next slide. So given the intersection between child welfare and sex trafficking, child welfare professionals can play a critical role in identifying and reporting victims, in determining appropriate services and placement options for victims, and helping to prevent future victimization of youth currently in care. Child welfare professionals, however, cannot address trafficking alone. Multidisciplinary, collaborative responses are needed, with child welfare professionals working closely with law enforcement, juvenile justice, runaway and homeless youth services, victim service providers, mental health professionals, and others. The overarching goal of these training modules that we'll talk about today are, you'll see on your screen, to increase awareness, knowledge, and skills related to child and youth sex trafficking and legislative requirements, improved infrastructure, including changes in policies and procedures related to identification and screening processes, changes in culture and climate to reflect increased commitment to focus on sex trafficking. So that's culture and climate within agencies, within provider agencies, and enhanced engagement and partnerships to address the provisions of Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act. So these are the overarching goals of this legislation and these training curriculums. So I do have another question for you all, and you can use the questions tab to answer. I'm curious about how might your agency, culture and climate, need to adapt as you implement the requirements of this legislation? What might need to change or adapt within your agencies to address PL 113-183? I'm going to see what I can do about being able to see. There we go. So one response is how we handle missing and runaway youth. That will be a change. Social workers might need to be more open-minded about the reality of trafficked youth, including males. We'll have to develop more residential programs for survivors of trafficking. More training. There'll be a requirement for more training or a need for more training for professionals. They're coming in fast. I can't keep up. I see what you mean, Christy. Anti-stigma campaigns. That's a good one, right? So that's a really stark example of what might need to change in terms of culture and climate within an agency. Implementation of a standardized screening tool, absolutely. Here's a comment from the Iowa State Patrol has the need for more training in looking beyond the stop, right? Workers' frustration with AWOL youth needs to be addressed. Being more aware of children being trafficked in small communities, absolutely. Train foster parents and child welfare staff how to identify and respond to children who have been trafficked, absolutely. And hopefully our fourth module for caregivers will help begin to address that issue. Christy, did you see any other ones on there that you thought were interesting that I missed? Because there's a lot of them. Okay, well, thank you guys for your responses. Those are very thoughtful, and indeed it will be a shift and an adaptation in terms of culture and climate for a lot of agencies in addressing these concerns. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. I'd like to just spend a few minutes talking about just doing sort of an overview of each of the modules so that you have a sense of what's in each module, what the content is, and you just have more awareness of what's available within each of the modules. So if you could go to the next slide. And I also want to note that you have a handout in your Handouts tab titled Modules at a Glance. And if it's the handout that is available to you that will help sort of walk through each of the modules, and it's intended to help you stay organized and ensure that you've included all of the components for each of the modules. So the Modules at a Glance really tells you what handouts, what activities, what digital stories go along with each of the modules and each of the units within a module. So let's talk for a second about the curriculum guides in general. So each of the four modules has its own curriculum guide, and you'll notice when you look into the curriculum guide that it is broken into individual units. So for example, for the caseworker module, it has 11 different units. So each unit covers different content within that module. Each of the guides will identify materials that you need in order to successfully present the module. It provides talking points to guide instruction. So it basically provides you a script that will help you facilitate the delivery of the module. And then you will also notice within each curriculum guide specific icons that highlight areas where you might want to customize and add additional resources based on the needs of your agency. So the paintbrush icon is there, and it's intended to help you identify areas where you want to add customized material. And the stylized square highlights where there are links to the different resources that are available either through the Children's Bureau or other external websites. So let's take a look at Module 1, the Caseworkers Curriculum Module. Next slide, please. So for Module 1, the Caseworker Curriculum, the key learning points, and again, this is a module that we strongly encourage everyone to attend before they attend any of the other modules. So the key learning points here for Module 1 are the correlation between child sex trafficking and child protective services, the importance of screening and assessment for child sex trafficking, the need for documentation and reporting requirements, best practices and service delivery, and then agency policies, procedures, and practice. So again, that last bullet point is where you would be able to customize and add in your agency policy, procedures, and practice related to the implementation of this legislation. I do want to note on the Modules at a Glance handout that that again, each of the activities and digital stories and handouts that are required for this particular module are listed. They're also listed within the curriculum guide itself. And there are 11 different handouts that go with this particular module. There are several different activities, and you'll want to note that for some of the activities, the instructions for the activity are contained within the script. And sometimes, depending on the activity, the instructions for the activity are provided in an appendix. So just depending on the length and complexity, if you will, of the training activity, it will depend on, it will influence where you find that particular information. There are, in Module 1, in the Caseworkers module, there are 4 different digital stories that are shared. And the purpose of the digital stories really is to enhance the learning points. So, for example, in the Caseworkers module, there is a digital story titled Sydney's Story. And it's meant to be an introduction to participants or to the audience about what it's like to be a survivor of child sex trafficking. And again, just to reiterate about the digital stories is that the digital stories are created by the narrator, the storyteller themselves, and so it's pretty powerful in just hearing from them in their own voice about their experience. So I do think that it really enhances the learning points. And within Module 1, there are 6 different activities. And again, they're all explained in a pretty detailed way within the curriculum guide. So just to make note of that. Next slide, please. Before I ask my question, I just wanted to, again, point out that for the Caseworkers module, agencies or users of this curriculum, you'll want to make sure that you identify the areas where you want to include information that's pertinent to your agency or jurisdiction. So things like how the process for identification, screening, and assessment of sex trafficking, protocols for location and reporting of children missing from foster care, what the expectations are for engaging community partners and organizations to address the needs of sex traffickers, and any data collection and reporting information. So, again, you'll see in the curriculum guide that paintbrush symbol that will indicate to you that those are areas where you can customize the material. And also to note, when you download the materials from the learning management system, you'll download them as Word documents. So they will be editable. They will be, you'll be able to go in and customize them so that they meet the needs of your agency. I do have so next slide, sorry. Lost my place. So I do have a question for everyone here. And that question is, and again, you can respond in the questions tab, what part of the training curriculum do you think, of this particular training curriculum, do you think staff will find the most difficult to put into practice? So will it be screening and assessment of child sex trafficking? Will it be documentation and reporting requirements that you think that your staff will have the most difficult time adapting to? Will it be around best practices in service delivery? You can answer in the questions tab what you think, based on what you know about your staff, what will be the most challenging elements. Documentation and best practice, service delivery. Yeah, limited resources, so that will make service delivery a little more challenging. Making a comprehensive assessment, okay. Using screening tools without causing further harm, that's interesting. Having new policy and limited services. Yeah, service delivery is coming up many times. What to do when it is determined child sex trafficking. Service delivery. So I'm hearing loud and clear from folks that service delivery will be a challenge. and then adapting to the different agencies and protocols. So the screening and the documentation and the reporting requirements will be a challenge. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Thank you for your responses, everyone. So Module 2 is the supervisor's curriculum, and the key learning points here for this particular module are really intended to help supervisors to supervise to casework practice related to child and youth sex trafficking. It's our second module, obviously, and again, it's intended to help supervisors apply, monitor, and support the implementation of PL 113-183. The curriculum will help encourage meaningful engagement, education, outreach, and cross-system coordination, as well as assess and address staff challenges and needs related to working with child and youth sex survivors of child and youth sex trafficking. Let's take a look at the modules at a glance handout for this particular module, Module 2. And within this module, there are four different digital stories that are available. There's actually more than four listed, and that's because we have included some optional digital stories if you decide that you'd like to show more than what's included within the curriculum. There are several different, there are 3 or 4 different activities. And again, the instructions will be provided within the curriculum guide. I did want to point out for this particular module that there is an activity titled Tiffany's Story, and that is, it's a little, hopefully it's not too confusing, just the title of the handout, because it's titled in the same way a lot of the digital stories are titled. But Tiffany's Story, which is a handout and an activity in the supervisor's curriculum, that is not a digital story. That is a separate handout, and it's an activity. It's an activity that's based on an activity from the caseworker's curriculum. So something to keep in mind, and another reason to have your supervisors attend the Module 1 for caseworkers, because there will be some foundational information provided during that within that curriculum, and some of the content in the supervisor's module will build off of that particular module. And then the other thing that I wanted to say here about the digital stories is that the digital stories that were selected for this particular module are intended to help give a point of view of caseworkers as well as supervisors who have been working with survivors who've been working with survivors of child and youth sex trafficking and or have been supervising staff who have been working with survivors. And so, again, the digital stories that go along with this module help to drive home the learning points within the curriculum. Move on to the next slide. My question related to this module is what elements of supervising casework related to child and youth sex trafficking do you think will be most challenging to supervisors? So you can use your question tab to respond. The question, what elements of supervising casework related to child and youth sex trafficking will be the most challenging? If anything. Attitude, vicarious traumatization, and how to support workers experiencing this, lack of resources, secondary trauma. Amount of time working with these kids will take, absolutely. Ensuring documentation and law enforcement notification are completed. Secondary trauma, lack of support. Building the skills for the caseworker to do a good job with screening and response. Changing opinions of caseworkers, secondary trauma. So secondary trauma is really coming up a lot, and just, again, changing some of that cultural and climate change within agencies around attitudes and sort of beliefs around these kiddos. Okay, thank you for your responses. Wow. Okay, they're all coming in like lightning fast. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. And again, thanks for responding. The next module is Module 3. Oops, I don't know, I think I've... And this is the Administrators and Managers curriculum. The intention of this particular module is to, again, help administrators and supervisors really understand their role in implementation of PL 113-183. This is a 3-hour training. So, and I should have said that with the supervisor's curriculum. The supervisor's curriculum is also 3 hours. And it is, and for Module 3 here, the Administrators and Managers curriculum, it's really designed to create dialogue among administrators and managers who are leading the implementation of PL 113-183. And the overall goal of this particular training module is for participants to understand their role as administrators and managers, to oversee the identification, reporting, and service delivery for survivors and potential victims of sex trafficking who become involved with the child welfare system. Yes, and again, I wanted to point out, too, that it is highly encouraged that administrators and managers attend the Module 1, the caseworker module, prior to attending this particular module, again, just because it provides, the caseworker module provides that foundational information and context. That's not to say they couldn't, just attend this one, but they really are strongly encouraged to attend Module 1. So briefly, just to review the modules at a glance, we did also include digital stories within this module, just a couple of them. The digital stories included in this particular module really are intended, again, to help present the point of view from caseworkers as well as survivors, and really drive home the importance of agency administrators and managers really taking an active role in the implementation of this legislation. There are 5 different handouts associated with this particular module, and I wanted to point out that there are several supplemental handouts available as well, related to AFGARs and runaway youth. And so those will all be, you'll have those links. We covered the links earlier in this webinar, but it's the links to those additional handouts or resources that will really help to enhance the material within this particular module. So I want to ask, if you move to the next slide, please. The question here that I have for folks, and you can again use your questions box to answer. So what types of challenges do you think agency administrators and supervisors, types of challenges do you think that they may encounter in the implementation of this legislation? Oh, somehow I can't see this again. Oh, here we go. Cross-system collaboration, absolutely. Adding more social workers, so additional staff. Monitoring compliance and quality assurance. Reporting the data. Making sure individuals are participating in required training and following elements. Having enough members on their team, right? Getting buy-in from stakeholders. For tribes, support from your tribal councils, collaboration with other agencies, interagency collaboration. That seems to be the thing. It's the buy-in from other stakeholders and collaboration with other agencies that keeps coming up. Okay, thanks for the responses. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. And then the fourth module is the caregiver's curriculum. And again, this module is intended for foster care providers, kinship care providers, and caregivers who are working with survivors of child and youth sex trafficking. And it really is meant to help them understand their role as caregivers in working with survivors, as well as provide them with knowledge and skills to support the kids that come into their care. The key training points here are, so that they have some understanding of the child welfare system response to child sex trafficking and the role of foster parents and caregivers. The federal definition of sex trafficking, which is very important to distinguish that. We also hope that they will recognize the risk factors associated with children and youth becoming victims of sex trafficking, because being in foster care is an elevation of risk for them. The impact of sex trafficking on survivors and responding to youth who are in care and have experienced or at risk of experiencing sex trafficking. So the material that is contained within this curriculum module get at each of those key learning points. Again, there are digital stories provided that help drive home some of those important key learning points for caregivers, things that they will that we want to make sure that they know and understand related to the kids who come into their care. Okay, next slide. Here's the question for you related to this one, and that is, what concerns do foster parents currently have related to working with youth and children and youth who are survivors of sex trafficking? Access to services, their own safety, absolutely, how to talk to youth, recruitment, available services, availability of effective services, safety, not labeling kids, being able to be supportive and assist without having preconceived ideas or opinions, safety issues, lack of knowledge on how to manage kiddos, limited resources, bias. Yeah, so there's a broad range of things. Being able to meet the needs of these kids through resources and home environment, fear that they can't protect the children in their care. Main concerns are no training available for foster parents to address the issue, how to deal with children to avoid runaway events, etc. Well, knowing what I know, being that I was the main curriculum developer or writer for all of these modules, a lot of these concerns that you're bringing up related to caregivers will definitely be addressed in one way or another within the curriculum module, as well as the other modules, the things that you all addressed in terms of the adaptations or the challenges that particular folks might have within your agency. In one way or another, will be addressed through each of the curriculum modules, which I think is good news. And it would be also very interesting to hear back from folks who decide to work with Hung about whether or not the modules actually do help address those questions and concerns that you have brought up today. Thank you for those responses. So yeah, a lot of fear around, not re-victimizing the kids in their care as well. Okay, next slide. So again, just a reminder that in each of the training modules, there are areas for customization, and they're highlighted by a blue paintbrush symbol. And for each of the modules, you'll want to make special note of those particular areas. The intention really is of each of these modules is for you to take them and make them your own, essentially, so that so that the material or the content that's delivered is specific to your agency. So we hope that you will do that. So hopefully we've taken the majority of the legwork out of it, and you just can plug that in. you have another handout, I should say, in your handouts tab, and it's titled Guidelines for Customizing PowerPoint Presentations. And I won't go through the whole handout in totality, but it just provides for you some information and guidelines around how you can add slides to the PowerPoint presentation and add the content that you'd like to add to the material that it fits, like I said, for your organization. Okay, I want to ask Christy, did you see any additional questions that we haven't answered yet?
Yes, if I could just scroll up for just a moment. We did have a question around the time frame of Module 1 and possibly addressing the modules, each module of how long it takes. You mentioned that Module 2 or 3 takes about 3 hours. And Laura's asking, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so Module 1 is a day and a half. So I think it's in total 7 days and then another 4 hours. 7 hours and 4 hours, so 11 hours total. Module 2 is 3 hours. Module 3, the administrator's curriculum is 3 hours. And the caregiver curriculum is 2 hours.
Okay.
Are there any other questions specific? Can we add logos? Yes, you can add logos.
At the beginning of the presentation, there were some questions around, are you planning to do any curriculum for judges? And have you considered or will you consider a court and or legal stakeholder curriculum? So those are somewhat similar.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't know if anyone else on the line as far as presenters go have an answer to that. We do a lot of collaboration with the Center for Court, so I wouldn't be surprised, but I can't answer it. So what we can do for questions that we're not able to answer is we'll write them down and we'll send out the responses to folks who registered for this webinar. Unless there's another presenter on the line who has the answers to that. Charmaine or Taffy, Jennifer.
This is Charmaine Britton, and those are excellent ideas, and we will take them and talk with our partners at the Center for Courts and see what they have to say as well. And this kind of feedback is exactly what we need, and we encourage you to provide that with us, because down the road there could be a part 2, depending upon the needs in the field.
Yes, absolutely. I see another question is about the timing. So, yes, the timing that we provide, the 1.5 days or the 3 hours or 3 hours, 2 hours, that's what we anticipate in terms of how long it will take to deliver the materials. Of course, if you add a lot more content on your own, related to your own agency, it could take longer than that. So just keep that in mind. Well, let's see. Any other questions, Christy, that you saw?
Yes. So is there others that should attend caregivers module besides caregivers?
Well, I would say that would be up to you and your agency. It is geared towards caregivers, but if you, as you look at the material, think that it would be appropriate or useful to other individuals, I would say, go ahead and invite them. I do think that the digital stories could be used as outside of the training modules as well. So you could use those as a training in and of itself to show the digital story and then have some conversation around those. Should Module 1 be a prerequisite for Module 4 or just Modules 2 and 3? Just Modules 2 and 3. Thanks for clarifying that. So, again, Module 1 is the caseworker curriculum, and it provides the foundational information related to the requirements of the legislation as well as, issues related to engaging survivors. So it's really, we strongly encourage administrators, managers, and supervisors to attend Module 1, not necessarily caregivers, because it really contains more information than caregivers need to know. Any guidance on training group 5 for maximum impact? I always say, it's my own opinion, but no more than probably 15 people for training for maximum impact. And again, I think that just the larger the group, the less time there is for real meaningful conversation and dialogue. And again, I think that agencies will just need to really decide that, what do they hope, what's the quality or what do they hope participants will walk away from, and base your audience size on that. Will Module 1 for caseworkers suffice for the 6 hours of specialized training that is mandated for CPVCM? That is a good question. Charmaine or Taffy or Jennifer, Christy, anyone on the line have a response to that?
I think they'd have to check the competencies and learning objectives to see if they are in alignment with what is necessary.
Okay. We could also write that one down and send out a further response.
Yeah.
Here's a question. When you refer to caseworkers attending Module 1, are you also including juvenile probation, parole officers, or specific CPS as an audience? Yeah, it's a good question. Again, the content is really geared towards caseworkers. I would say that if you take a look at the information, I think it would be very easily adapted to including juvenile probation and parole officers. I think that's something that, again, within your agency, you would want to make that decision, again, based on the needs of your agency. A lot of the content within Module 1 is related to best practice, and so I venture to say that the best practice is true for juvenile probation and parole officers as well as CPS workers. But again, take a look at the content and you can decide what would be appropriate for your agency. Is the caregiver module for resource parents? It could be. Again, I would say take a look at the content in more detail and decide whether or not the audience of resource parents that you would like to present it to, if it would make sense for them. Can you break up the 11 hours of training? You could. It's absolutely doable. Again, I would say adapt it so that it works for your agency. Again, the intention is that we hope that the modules will help create capacity within your agencies to address the implementation, engagement of survivors. So if it makes sense or is most useful or most beneficial for you to break it up, I would say that would be fine. Christy, did I miss any questions? Because they're kind of coming in fast and furious.
I believe you had addressed everything thus far. Thank you.
Okay, I see one here. Do the modules address the physical and mental health issues, sex trafficking? Yes. Module 1, and again, there's another reason why we are encouraging folks to attend Module 1 is because that module does address the mental health issues of sex trafficking, the physical and mental health issues of sex trafficking for survivors as well as on some level for workers. So Module 1 really will provide some background around sex trafficking, so provide some context around sex trafficking on a national level, and you can also include context around sex trafficking within your jurisdiction. It provides some overview of the legislation. It talks about it covers the risks and characteristics of child sex trafficking. We talk about the victim and trafficker relationship and the needs of survivors. It covers the screening and assessment of potential victims, and we talk about trauma-informed practice and working across systems as well. So it's pretty in-depth it's pretty broad in terms of the content within Module 1 that really would be useful for supervisors, administrators, and managers to have. Let's see. No one has implemented this training yet, and so we haven't gotten any responses. And so we would love it if you would contact Hong Fo to participate in an evaluation so that we know if the curriculum is effective and useful, and if not, what might need to be changed. How can a
Thank
county
you, Brenda. I would second
program?
that.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Hong.
No, I said thank you. I would second that.
Yeah. So the question here, how can a county foster care training program use this training? Take a look at the content. You can, the caregiver module would be appropriate for your training system. So I would say, I would encourage you to look at all of the modules, of the content in all of the modules. And the fourth module for caregivers would be really useful for your training program. It's a 2-hour curriculum or training curriculum geared towards foster care providers, and you can adapt it, and you can include information specific to your agency or jurisdiction. So you can take the content that is there and add to it, enhance it in a way that would make it most relevant for your jurisdiction. The question here is, does the training cover risk factors such as racial and ethnic minorities and LGBT? Yes. And there is additional handouts and information links and information available as well to enhance the content even further. We wanted to include as much as we could, but also leave room for the curriculum, for the content to be enhanced based on the needs of your audiences and your jurisdiction. Do we address data collection? Yes, data collection is briefly addressed within the caseworker module, supervisor module, as well as the the administrator and manager module. Are you available for technical assistance to adapt the curriculum for a state? Christy, do you have the email address that folks would want to email to if they had questions or need of technical assistance?
Actually, if you go to the CAP Learn page, there is a drop-down if you hover, and I can demo it if you'd like,
Sure.
of Capture Help, and you can fill out your remarks there, and that will filter to our support team who will get back to you.
Okay. So, yeah, if you go to learn.childwelfare.gov, there will be a link. So I think, are you trying to go there? Christy's navigating there. Oh, CAP Learn Help?
Yep, that would be it.
Yeah, if you go to that landing page or that tab within the learning management system, you can type in your request there. You guys have great questions. Would adapted modules be helpful for 911 and or dispatchers? That's a very good question. Wow. What I want to say is that'd be really cool. Why don't you try it out and let us know? Wow. I don't know why it wouldn't be. Again, I think I would just encourage you to take a look at the content and think about the audience that you would be training to as far as 911 and dispatchers, and you'd certainly use the content and create a module for them from it. Has this information been made into a computer-based training? Are there any concerns for using sessions of the curriculum as CDTs? We do not have it developed as a computer-based training, and we'll have to take down the question about whether there would be concerns for using sessions of the curriculum in CDTs. I don't know if there would what the response, the appropriate response for that is. So we'll have to get back to you on that. Does the curriculum cover a timeline of events? For example, if you have situation A, then do this. If you have situation B, then do this, etc. Not specifically in that way. The curriculum doesn't necessarily provide a timeline scenario. There are different scenarios that are provided within the. So the answer is no. It's not specific. There's none of the curriculum modules provide a timeline of events example, but there is within the content that those issues are addressed. Hopefully that makes sense.
Brenda, this is Jennifer. I'm wondering if I can
Thank you.
hop in for a second. I did just want to say that folks can talk to their state liaisons about any assistance they need in implementing any aspect of PL 113183, including the training curriculum. So that's also a resource for folks.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. And I do see our time, and we are running low on time. I'll just address one more question and then turn it back over to Jennifer to just address the topic of CEUs for this webinar. The other question that I wanted to answer is, within the content, is there skills-based activities? And I would say yes. Specifically within the caseworker module, there are skills-based activities around engaging with survivors, around screening, around identifying potential victims. And then within the supervisor curriculum, again, there's some skills-based activities around supervising type of casework practice. So yes. Okay, so I think we have to, unfortunately, wrap up the questions session. You have lots of them, so thank you. And we'll try to provide, I don't know if there's a way for us to keep this list of questions and try to provide a sort of FAQ afterwards, but if we can, we will. But I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer, who's going to provide some additional information around obtaining CEUs for this particular webinar. Jennifer?
Thank you, Brenda. Christy, I'm wondering if you can go back one slide, please. I wanted to let folks know that the Center for States is very excited to offer CEUs in connection with our webinars and learning experiences. If you're interested in receiving CEUs, we have them for social work, clinical psychology, or licensed marriage and family therapy, and we encourage you to take advantage of this great opportunity. Following the webinar, you guys will receive an email link with instructions for applying for CEUs. If you decide to participate, we're interested in your feedback, and you can provide feedback by responding to the email with the CEU instructions. And that concludes our webinar for today. Please do let us know if you have any questions. Christy, if you want to go back to that final slide, it does have our website on there, and we encourage you to please visit that. It's capacity.childwelfare.gov/state. So thank you all very much for participating today, and we hope to hear from you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the conference call for today. We thank you for your participation. You may now disconnect your line and have a great day.